HW here, just hanging out in the morning. And today I want to talk about the top 4 reasons that I see of why your modeler sounds like. Okay, so this is the number one complaint that I hear from friends, customers, viewers. Help, I bought a modeler, a Helix, a Quad Cortex, a Kemper, and it doesn't sound like it does on the videos online. It doesn't sound like your videos, HW. It doesn't sound like Leon Todd. It doesn't sound like John Cordy. It doesn't sound like the demos that the company put out. What am I doing wrong? Help me. And the number one thing I see is people don't understand stock presets and stock settings. HW, are you saying all stock presets are bad? No, most of them are though. And the other problem is stock presets often don't have a lot of context. Sometimes they have a name like Edgy Streets, and you know that Streets have no name sound. But sometimes they just have like Overdriven Marshall. And the problem with that is you really don't know if that is a tone meant for Hendrixy Overdriven Marshall, Eric Clapton, John Mayall's Blues Breakers, or are we over here in Yngwie Malmsteen, 80s, DeMartini kind of stuff. We just don't know, right? Is this Joe Satriani Marshall, or is it, early Cream Marshall? We just don't know. And so sometimes I notice people plug in their guitar and they go, that's not the sound in my head. That's not right. This thing's terrible. They try to adjust it. But it fundamentally is already the preset has chosen the wrong things. And so that forces the user to have to build something on their own, which is totally fine. You should, with a modeler and any sort of digital things, be trying to do things on your own. But then we run into the problem of stock sort of settings. And that's this problem. I see this all the time on any modeler that has models, QC, Helix, Headrush. People go, okay, I want the sound of a really great deluxe reverb. They pull up the deluxe and they pull up the deluxe cabinet and they go, why does that not sound like the sound in my head? How come it doesn't sound like this other thing I played on another unit? That was a deluxe. Usually the stock settings on an amp are just set right in the middle, and especially with cabinets. When you pull up a cabinet on your modeler, that's usually like someone handing you a digital version of a microphone and a cabinet. And all they did was plug it in. They haven't done anything. A lot of times users, I notice, think in their head, they assume this is like already set to the go-to sound. But those stock settings, where you often start when you load up a cabinet or load up an amp, is not always typically where a player sets the EQ or the distance or whatever when you're moving around a microphone. And so to get the sound in your head, a lot of times the sound in your head or that you're referencing in a video or an example, a lot of times someone could be using an IR, which could be 2 cabinets and a microphone, or 2 cabinets, 2 different microphones, 2 different locations. So to get that sound, you're gonna have to sit there with your modeler and kind of know that going in. Now, I think the easiest solution to this is if you want to judge a unit by how good it sounds, listen to a video that sounds really great, go to Tone Junkie, download some free stuff. If it doesn't sound like the video, right, then we've got another problem. But at least my settings are the same as this reference that I'm using. Does that make sense? I also think starting with an IR that is really great, and I tend to do that. I tend to go, all right, let me try this amp model. This IR is what I use on these other amp models. Now let's compare it. So that we have a starting point, if that makes sense. And that's what I do. I tend to favor IRs. There are some of the most incredible free IRs at the link down below. Also, if you're on Helix or other stuff, you can find free links down below for all sorts of stuff. Tone Junkie Free Pack is incredible. Start there. It can probably solve some of your problems, but you might have one of these other 3 problems. The next one is, what are you listening through? This is the number one thing I sort of hear from people. I went from listening to my amp on 5 or my amp on 3 or whatever in my room to listening on these little studio monitors, and it just doesn't sound good. Couple things. One, you've got the monitors now pointed at your ears. That's a different listening experience. It just is. Even if you turn them up, which I would recommend you do, things that are louder sound better. I notice, a little side note here, I notice a lot of players will play tube amps louder than they will modelers, and then they'll say, it sounds wimpy and compressed. No, dude. You're comparing 2 things that are like literally 6 decibels apart. That's crazy. That's like going to a movie theater and listening to the sound and then pulling it up on your phone and listening and going, this isn't as immersive. And it's like, no, of course it's not. But the file that's being delivered to you is the movie. Does that make sense? Like, you're hearing the same sounds, it's just a very different listening experience. And so if you want the best tone out of your modelers, one, you have to accept the only way you're going to get the amp in the room sound is if you go with a larger cabinet, like a Tonex cab is really a great one. I haven't tried the new Line 6, Helix cab CR or whatever, the Power Cab CR. I really want to. The Kemper cab is really good. The Fender FR is pretty good too. I like that one. To me, that one's a little less flat, but it's very good. I really like kind of what it does to the sound. That will give you more of an amp in the room sound. You're going to need a bigger cabinet. You're going to need it pointed at your feet. You need to place something in the same spot as you place your amp if you want that exact sound. But for modelers, it's really important that you recognize FR, studio monitors, nothing is flat. Nothing is transparent and flat. Nothing. There's a reason different studio monitors exist because they all sound different. They do different things, right? They're all going to represent your sound better than a guitar speaker, much better. But once you get into the realm of reproduction of sound, of studio monitors, of FR speakers, now you can start to appreciate the differences in each and choose whichever one works better for you. What I would say is a lot of times I run into people who have problems with the Headrush FRFRs. There's just too much bass. Those are not, a lot of people get mad at me when I say this. I've tried them. They are not guitar FRFRs. They're not. They are DJ speakers rebranded. That's okay. That will get you the sound. But when you listen and you have all this deep, deep low-end chug, and then you plug it into something else, that low-end chug will not be there. And when you don't have the low-end chug, and then you plug it into that, you might hear all this low-end chug and go, wow, it sounds like a 412. If that's what you're after, you may like it a lot. But I've seen just as many people have a big problem with it as have a lot of success with it. That's not a fault of the unit, really. The unit just has character, and I'm all for character. Everything has character. We use the gear that we use because of the character it has. And so if you're into it, you're into it. If not, but you may need to change what you're listening through. What you're listening through is having a huge effect on your sound. So try different things. See if it gets better with headphones. See if you jump to studio monitors or whether you can jump to something else. See if that cleans up some of your problem. If nothing else, you'll begin to appreciate the differences and you may be able to figure out how to fix it. Also, I would recommend for a lot of these units, if there is a monitor EQ, a separate monitor EQ in the output section or wherever in the settings, often that's a good way to adjust what you're hearing in an external monitor so that what you're sending to the front of house is not affected by that. For example, that Headrush cab that I talked about, if I'm using it out of a Kemper or Helix or whatever that has a monitor out, Helix doesn't have that, but I'm able to maybe pull down some of that bass so that what I'm sending front of house is good, and I'm only changing what I am experiencing. Does that make sense? I hope so. Next thing, this is a really important one and a really underappreciated one. My guitar is not your guitar. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten the email, HW, I have a really high quality guitar. It doesn't sound anything like your guitar. Or HW doesn't sound anything. I downloaded these packs and it doesn't sound anything like the video. And the problem's not my guitar. It's a very high quality guitar. Quality doesn't have anything to do with it. Quality doesn't have anything to do with it. Some people are driving a Ford Focus. Let me put it this way. That's low quality, right? Or someone's going to say it sounds good. Let me put it this way. Some people are out here driving a tricked out lifted truck F350 with lights and like sound pumping out the back, and there's a pool built in, and that's a great car. That's their dream car, like, right? They might have a G-Wagon with bulletproof windows, and somebody else is driving a Porsche Boxster. Those things are way different, and those two things might be two people's dream car or ideal car for a certain situation. But off-roading is not, I almost said the Tour de France, but that's a bike race. The Indy 500, right? Different tools for different jobs. This guitar is very different than some of the other guitars that it looks just like. The pickups are advertised as being a certain thing. It sounds a lot darker than my Charvel that has same bridge, same body wood, or maybe close, Just very similar vibe. Sounds very different than my Charvel. These pickups are just different. Don't underestimate pickups. I have two Stratocasters that I play on the channel a lot. One's a real Strat, one's a Fender custom shop. Has amazing custom shop dual mag pickups. They're like my favorite Strat pickups. My Suhr, which I don't have sitting here, it's up here somewhere. My Suhr, HSS, right? Those single coils sound great. They are not as chimey and as bright as my Fender, right? Why? The Suhr pickups pair with its humbucker perfectly, right? Those pickups pair perfectly with its humbucker. So that when I'm using that guitar and I adjust the tone, the humbucker sounds awesome. The single coils sound awesome. They match. I can jump between them perfectly. But what that means is comparing those single coils to another guitar single coils, it's different. It's just different. They both sound good. The Suhr sounds more mid-rangey, less sparkly. That's often something I like. But when you're doing a, beautiful, delicate thing, a country thing, a Hendrixy thing, you might want more sparkle high end. That's one thing I notice. People go, I have a Strat, I plug it in, it doesn't sound like that. There's a million types of Stratocaster pickups. There's a million types of Tele pickups. Your guitar is making a huge difference. And that's why I make so many videos on being able to edit and change your tone, because if you hear what you want and you have what you have, there's a way to kind of get there. And the better you become about hearing what's different about two tones, the better you're going to be at making adjustments that get you closer. Are you ever going to get right exactly there? You might be close enough to fool yourself or do it exactly like you remember it, but when you A/B, things are always going to be different. I really think people underappreciate how different two pickups that say they're PAFs are, or two pickups that say they're 60 Strats or 50 Strats. They're all over the place. They are all over the place. To me, those terms, Strat, single coil thing, that's like sports car, coupe, sedan, performance, truck. The models are that different. Two sports cars can be very different from each other, right? Just completely different. They can have a different number of seats. The engine can be in the front, in the back, in the middle, and the driving experience is just going to be so different. And then someone will come out with something like an electric car, and now it's just like it's hardly even the same thing. And so comparing them really is difficult. Your guitar makes so let me just leave you at this point. The third point here is really your guitar makes a much bigger difference than you realize. Whatever you think the difference is, trust me, it's more. Trust me, it's way more. You can adjust things around because it's a recipe. Tone is a recipe. But trust me, it's a lot more. The last thing is this, and this is kind of the most, the point that I really think is underappreciated. I mentioned turning it up. I do think that's important. You got to have things at the same level if you want to compare them, or your brain will favor one over the other. But here's the real one. You have to let your ears adjust. I'll tell you, just this morning I came down here and I turned on this guitar modeler that I'm using, this Kemper, and I turned on and I picked up a different guitar and I started playing, and it sounded so thin. And that sensation was because I had been listening to big music with all this stuff, right? And I immediately turned on my guitar and it sounds small and thin. Well, I was playing a 15 watt amp with a Strat. Of course it's going to sound thin, right? But the more I played it, it started sounding great. And there's always that first feeling of something. And I have so many examples where I've shown this to people in person. But if you play one thing for a long time and then we switch to something else, right? And we play that for a long time, when we switch back to that first thing, it doesn't sound as good as you remember it. It takes a moment to adjust. Your ears are a lot like your eyes. And so when you're sitting there with your model or flipping through all these IRs or all amp models, that is like being at the optometrist if you have glasses and they're just putting all these different lenses in front of you. It's very disorienting. That's like losing your vision. It's like being on drugs or something. And your brain is telling you this is a disorienting feeling. I don't like this. And that's why you shy away from it so much. This is a really big thing to understand. Your brain does not like things moving around in a circular motion. It thinks it's getting, that's that dizziness feeling, right? When things start to spin. That's your brain saying, hey, I'm impaired. This is not good. And then that's why people get it in the car. You get car sick. It's your same thing with sound. Sound can have that effect too. Your brain is constantly taking in information from your eyes, your ears, all your senses. And when certain things throw it off, it can be, that is that disorienting feeling. It takes a person a while to switch a speaker out of an amp. It takes a very short amount of time to just click from one IR to another. And there's a time there where you need your sound to adjust. You need your brain to adjust. You have to play things for what I find is about 6 or 7 seconds before your brain sort of, at least for me, before my brain puts away the that's too much feeling, and it just starts to actually listen to what's there. One of the best examples I have of this is I one time was meeting with a company, and there was a room full of people, and several of us were listening to a new speaker cabinet, and one was a 10-inch and one was a 12-inch, and the 12-inch had a lot more bottom end, and we were playing the 12-inch, and it sounded really good, right? And everyone was like, I think I like the 12-inch, and they go, let's just try the 10-inch, and we played the 10-inch for 3 seconds. And everyone went, no, the 12-inch is better. 12-inch is better. So everyone kept talking. And I said, hey guys, listen to this. And I asked the guitar player sitting there, I said, can you just play this 10-inch for a while? Just play it. Like play a little bit. I want to show them something. He starts playing, Eddie. He starts ripping it up, just going crazy. And I said, keep playing. And while he's playing, I told the guys, I said, now watch this. When we switch back to the 12, you're going to feel like it sounds muffly and bloated and too much. And then I ran over and I told the guy, okay, stop playing. Unplug the 10, plug it into the 12. And I look back and everyone's face is like, because they all went, whoa, it sounds really bassy and big. And we sat there and we had a conversation about getting used to sound and how your brain lies to you. So this is a big thing. If you get a modeler and you feel like that sound is terrible, if you just the faster you switch, the more you'll hate it. The faster you switch your sounds, the more you'll hate them. Sit there and try to dial it in so that it sounds good. And about half of that dialing in process is just your brain starting to get used to something and telling you this is good. But the brain doesn't, all of a sudden EQ shifts and your brain is trying to translate all this information. EQ is how we determine whether something is far away from us or close to us, right? Do that. Take your fingers, rub next to your ear. Your skin, when it rubs against each other, makes a lot of sound when you hold it here. But you can't, from just a few feet away, I can't even hear this. But here it's super loud. And that EQ, that super present high end that is right there next to my ear, that sensation I get, that is what tells your brain, someone snuck up on you. Whoa! That's why people come close to you and they go, that's why the creepiest thing is someone coming up to you and whispering in your ear when you didn't know they were there. Because what is the information you just took in? Someone speaking at a low voice and they're close. But you didn't know anyone was that close. That's the reason it's scary, is because someone has just gotten very close to you without you knowing. It's not that a whisper is scary. When you hear music far away at a festival or something very far away, you always hear the low end and it's very grumbled and you don't have any clarity. It always sounds muffled. That's because the high end doesn't have enough energy in the wave to get far out there. Someone's going to say, actually, high end has more energy because there's more oscillations. Okay, fine. But when you get far enough out, the high stuff has faded. It's hit things and bounced off. The low frequencies are what travels further and further and further. And so your brain it doesn't talk to you about that it learns all this, but it knows it, right? You can tell when a car accident is right outside your door or a couple blocks away. You can tell because you hear the and you also hear that sizzle, crackle of the glass on top. That tells you the distance. And so you just have to appreciate that it's going to take you a minute to adjust. And you gotta like give, it's like you put that little glass, that glass of wine, you put it in your mouth and you take a moment to swirl it. You think about it for a minute. There's an initial taste, there's a mid taste, and there's an aftertaste. And that is the sensation that you kind of have with sound when you first hear something. There's how it first hits you, there's how it feels, and then there's like kind of how you feel after you've been listening to a while or how you remember it, you know? And like I can tell you, I don't need to show you how Adele sounds. You remember her voice in your head. You don't hear it audibly, but you sort of remember it in a way that you can hear it, right? Same thing with any song. You remember it. You have a memory of it, and you remember the tone. And so just like dialing through the radio, it's like that's not fun listening to the radio when it goes, today, you know what I'm saying? That is not good. That's a disorienting feeling. But when you sit down and just engage and listen, you begin to take in things and sound changes. Your brain adjusts. This is really an important thing. I really do believe I've seen a lot of people flip through quickly and write off modelers. There's a couple of people who I hear right now. I had the Helix Stadium open that thing up for an hour. Nope, it's going back. I go, that's a guy who needs to hear number 4. Let your ears adjust. And maybe number 1, stock settings and stock like parameters, stock presets, stock presets, stock settings. It's not dialed in for you to start. So after 7-8 years of doing this, those are the top 4 by far reasons I hear that people have trouble with modelers. Hopefully this has been helpful. I have videos on all this stuff and free stuff in the links below. HW.